Hi, I thought I'd come on here to talk a little bit about why I don't really believe in the Asperger's diagnosis, and I'll talk a little bit about how I was diagnosed and so on. Asperger's syndrome is a really loose term to describe individuals on the autism spectrum that don't necessarily have the comorbid learning difficulties associated with autism, but will still have the social and communication problems as well as many other autism traits. However, I don't use the term because it doesn't make any sense to me. For me, the line is too blurry between what you could consider Asperger's syndrome and just plain ASD. And I think that everyone on the spectrum has their own completely unique set of struggles and strengths. And you can't really put people into boxes like Asperger's because it's just too generalised. And it's kind of like, at what point does it cross over into a different diagnosis when really it's very much the same. And I've seen an overwhelming amount of evidence based on many individuals that I've met with both the autism diagnosis and the Asperger's diagnosis that it is the same condition. It's just such a unbelievably wide spectrum. So one way that I like to visualise it, that's quite clear to me, is that everyone with autism is kind of like a mixing console, and every fader is an autism trait or a set of autism traits, and every single person on the spectrum will have their own completely unique mix that no one else has. I think that some people with the Asperger's diagnosis or parents of someone with Asperger's might use that to differentiate themselves from the more severe forms of autism, which is almost quite understandable in a way because of course it's worlds apart from somebody with more severe autism. However, I just think that it's too varied from person to person to really strictly categorize it like that. I think if you're on the spectrum, you need to try to form relationships with other individuals that have somewhat of a similar ability to you, because those are the ones that you really click with from my experience. Now, I was put into a local autism group, but I left very quickly because I found the people there to be very socially and communicatively slow. And I'm in no way saying that I'm better than any of these people. I think that everyone on the spectrum is equally special and important. It's just that it's not a good match. You need to find individuals with quite similar abilities to yourself in order to really thrive in a social environment. And I have autism friends with quite low support needs like myself, who I can communicate with very articulately. And I don't think that the speech or the rhythm of the conversation would differentiate to that of people without autism. By definition, I have Asperger's syndrome. I started speaking really early and never had any speech delay, and I was a very fluent, seemingly neurotypical child even when I was very little. However, I was actually diagnosed with classic autism when I was 7, and I think the reason for this is that I always found being assessed very patronising and boring, and so I would deliberately mess around and give wrong answers, and just generally not take the situation seriously for whatever reason. I think I was always the same with emotional stuff when I was a child. People would say, well, Louis doesn't know how to act when someone is hurt. But of course I knew how to act. It just made me feel unnatural and awkward for whatever reason, and I didn't want to act, but I knew what to do. When I entered primary school, I found it hugely difficult to learn to read and write. And I think the reason for this is because the classroom environment was just so not right for me. You know, everything, just the fashion in which things were being taught just wasn't very accommodating to my needs. And I would often, probably most days, be very withdrawn and sort of in a sort of shut down state. Apparently, according to my mum, I was actually like almost catatonic a lot of the time, and they would have to ring her up because I was just totally unresponsive and wouldn't even talk a lot of the time, just through being totally overloaded. I think another reason is that my fixation on my obsession with music was so intense at that time. It was really hard for me to learn about other things because that is where my head was at the time. You know, it's always been really difficult for me to learn about and pursue things that I'm not interested in because that's not where my heart is at. And that special interest with music is something that I've had since I was 2 years old and still have to this day. You know, I think the only effective education I had when I was a young child was, you know, pursuing that interest with music and listening to my mum's music collection. So that's just a very quick video on why I just don't really recognise Asperger's as being a thing. You know, of course it isn't diagnosed anymore because it it blends with autism so much. There's just no difference, I don't believe. I hope you enjoyed, and I'd love to make more content like this very soon. I've got a lot of things to say, and I think really my motivation for doing videos is that I want to learn more. I've been really passionate about learning more about autism and my autism since I was about 18, and I really want to kind of expand and hear a great deal of different people's perspectives on the matter. Thanks for watching.